voice is such an extension of who we are and how we connect with others, that we will be embarrassed if we can't sing at a certain level, even if we're just beginning. And also just the shaming of other people. People just joke, oh, that voice is terrible. It's like, well, why do you have to take that from that person? Why do you have to attack that? So many people, they don't sing because they have heard a rude comment or critique from a family member, from a loved one, that wasn't meant to cause that amount of harm, but it does. And people will just stop singing for decades and feel that they can't. And it's a terrible shame. Nobody stops cooking because they can't cook like Gordon Ramsay.
Before we get into it, a quick note on the gap since the last episode. We've had a new arrival in the family, which has given us a few extra weeks in between episodes and a lot more tiredness. But we're back now, we're back on schedule, and we're very glad to be here. This is We Help Singers, a podcast about matching singers with teachers who actually fit how they learn. The voice teaching industry works on a myth, that the best teachers can teach anyone. We're here to challenge that. Every teacher has a paradigm, which is a way of seeing, singing, and learning that directs everything they do in the lesson room. Some teachers know their paradigm, a lot don't, and singers pay the price in mismatched lessons. So we're having conversations with voice teachers about how they actually teach, not their marketing pitch, the real stuff. For episode 5, I'm talking with Mr. John Henny, a voice teacher with more than 20 years of experience who has spent most of that time trying to understand exactly what is happening inside the vocal tract when a singer finds their voice. John trained extensively in speech-level singing, has been deeply influenced by the acoustic science of Donald Miller, and now runs the Intelligent Vocalist podcast, where he brings that same curiosity to conversations with researchers and teachers right across the field. We cover the science behind why straws and lip bubbles actually work, what's happening in the voice when a singer finally finds their mix, and why John believes that knowing more about how the voice works has made him a better listener, not just a better technician. Let's go and see John. Okay, everyone, we are here today with the John Henny, 20 years master SLS teacher, then has gone on to do many things in the singing world. His own methodology is based around, heavily influenced by Donald Miller's work in formant harmonic relationships. He's gone on to teach voice teachers globally, release online courses, and of course is the host of the Intelligent Vocalist podcast. John, welcome to We Help Singers. Lovely to see you. Can I ask your first question? What are you obsessed about at the moment in the singing world, whether that's in terms of pedagogy or anything else?
I think in terms of pedagogy, the last thing that really hit me hard is the Julian Chen's transient theory of voice production, where we look at the model of the voice and the sound waves as a steady state signal, like analogous to a violin. So it's just this constant flow. Whereas what they have found is that the voice is more analogous to a drum, and it's a single instant pop. And those pops happen so quick, it's like a drum roll, so that we hear it as a continuous tone. But it's just constant micro events. So that now as the singer, depending on what we want to do, we have to tune the vocal tract so that certain aspects of that event last longer to meet up with the next event, primarily the higher frequencies. And I know I'm just babbling here, but that's kind of wrapping my brain around that and the implications of that. And then just in the general voice world, I'm really just trying to figure out where this rocket ship of artificial intelligence is going to take us, not just as humankind, but also within the arts and singing and teaching.
There is a lot. How do you sleep at night with that lot going on? Good Lord.
I don't know if it's part of age, but I do find myself waking up at 4 a.m. and getting on my laptop.
Sure, yeah. Well, it's such a wonderful time to live in that sense, and not to get onto the AI stuff right now, because I'd love to come back to that, but it seems to me that it's such a great time to live if you're a curious person, because you can find out whatever you want to find out whenever you want to find it out currently, and I love that. But I want to return to what you said at the start before we go too far. Can you speak more about the method you were speaking of at the start there, and
Yeah.
and how that does find its way into your, if it does find its way into your lessons right now?
The way I understood the voice previously is
Hmm.
that the vocal cords or vocal folds would close over, build this pressure beneath them, and then it would just release the sound wave containing all the harmonics. And as I delve into this and get my head around it, and Dr. Ian Howell is someone who really opened my eyes and ears to this existing. But that these little bursts of energy, these what Julian Chen calls timbrons, um, they don't have ordered harmonics. It's a wide spectrum burst of energy that happens very quickly. But as these propagate through the vocal tract and they begin to happen very, very quickly, they order themselves into harmonics. And then these harmonics are further increased or decreased in terms of their energy based on resonances in the vocal tract, which we can change and move. That's what we're doing all the time as singers. And then those energies radiate as formants. And as I talk like this, I sound ridiculous. I know, because it takes a while to for me to get my head around it, and then to explain it in a way that makes sense. So I apologize to your listeners that this is not oversimplified, but basically, or simplified enough to make sense in this conversation. But basically, you have these bursts of energy in the vocal tract, and how you shape the vocal tract has a huge effect on the final product. And it's actually the old idea of sing from your diaphragm, I think, can start to be reframed as sing from your vocal tract. It's what's happening above the vocal cords that is so vitally important. And the the energies that are created and how those energies are reflected back, um, increase in pressure above the vocal folds, and the radiation of energy back to the vocal folds. What that does, that's why using straws and lip bubbles works so well, because they increase the pressure above your vocal cords. And when that pressure is increased, it takes less pressure below the vocal cords to get them to phonate or make sound. That's referred to phonation threshold pressure. So there's a fancy term for you, PTP. But the lower you can get that PTP value, the easier it is to sing. That's why using straws in water, and all the SOVT semi-occluded vocal tract exercises are just so essential and important for singers.
And just to, yeah, I mean, that's a great way to put it. So the PTP, the phonation threshold pressure, essentially, am I right in thinking that that is, we want that to be reduced because
Yes.
it's no bad thing. I mean, it can lead to a bad thing if that pressure is high, because clearly when tissues are coming together, if the pressure is high, then the tissues will come together harder, and therefore fatigue and just general tiredness will occur faster within the tissues of the voice. Is that the main reason as to why we want to reduce that PTP?
Yeah, it's an overall reduction in effort. And then the reduction in effort, when things are more effortful, the body tends to want to jump into the void and assist. So we start to over muscle things. That's another thing that I'm pretty fascinated in, is this idea of how much energy and tension we need to use in the voice. I'll often joke, but I'm serious. Tension-free singing is called silence. So we need that energy. We need that tension. We need the tongue actively involved. The tongue shouldn't be this this flaccid muscle just laying in the mouth. All of it is important in tuning uh, the vocal tract. But we want the minimal amount of effort to get the desired result. So that effort obviously will go up if we're singing more robustly. But you can experience it if you can buzz your lips like a trumpet player. And this also speaks to hydration and why we need moisture on the vocal folds. But if you'll notice that trumpet players always lick their lips before they buzz their lips. So if you can do that, lick your lips and buzz like a trumpet player. Now, wipe your lips dry.
What am I doing? Do I give it a little like that?
Yeah. Just feel like
I'm,
and note the effort. Right? And now wipe your lips dry and try it again.
right.
Right?
Well,
You feel how much more pressure behind the lips it took to make that sound. You didn't get an extra boost in sound. Actually, the lip buzz for me doesn't sound as good when it's dry. And it
no.
also took more energy and effort. So that the vocal cords are very analogous to a buzzing trumpet player's lips. And so that amount of push and shove that it requires if that PTP is high. That's why, tuning your resonance, vowel tuning, working with vowels, what that does when we get that dialed in is the resulting energy above the vocal cords. That increase in pressure above reduces the PTP. So when singers will actually get their voice dialed in, it's like, oh, that feels easy in a way that's almost magic. I'm sure you've had this when people first find that in their voice. You'll often call it mix but just basically acoustic balance and physical balance in the voice. I've had people reduced to tears a number of times. They're just so stunned by how it feels and how easy it is.
It's funny you say that because I'll often say to people that, do you realize that some people will go their entire life and never feel what you've just felt?
Yep.
And and there's a sadness there. I mean, I feel sad for. I mean, of course, they find their pleasure elsewhere, I'm sure, but it's a wonderful experience and only something something you can't explain. But just for our listeners at home, there, could we? I mean, of course, with your mind, we covered a number of things there, and so fundamentally, we're talking about the before long time ago. There was the thought that, or the theory that the airflow would fly through the vocal folds would make a noise, and that was where the process stopped. But then, in I think it was around the early 2000s, at late 90s, when it sort of the acoustics of the vocal tract and its relationship with the system just transferred into more of the practical voice teacher world. I could be wrong. Maybe that's just when I came into it, but that was this extra piece of, hey, yeah, of course the airflow matters, and then the fold will move around in the middle at the top there, but in fact they're not at the top of the system. The vocal tract balances the pressure from below with the airflow. The airflow balances the pressure that's in the vocal tract, and it creates a wonderful chamber of energy that the vocal folds are sat in the middle of, and then they're just loving life in the middle there because there's sort of balance between these pressures. That's a sort of whimsical way in which I sometimes describe it in some workshops. But is that trajectory? Is that where we're at now? And this added piece you mentioned about the sort of more percussive side of things, is that something new that would add to this that framework, or is it always been somewhat in the explanation for how it works?
Think that Julian Chen's work, and he worked with Dr. Miller on this as well. I think the acceptance of that and the more widespread understanding is more new. But I think singers and voice teachers have understood obviously the importance of vowels and resonance and the resulting sensations of these energies for as long as there's been singing. In terms of trying to understand the voice and using models, we tend to think of things in ways that we understand in the physical world. So we'll look at, machines, and we try and think of the body as a machine, and the body is so incredibly complex, and the understanding of the mechanics, even the simple mechanics of the TA muscles within the vocal folds, right? They're more dominant in what we'll call chest voice or lower register. And then the CT muscles will stretch and be more dominant in head voice. And we kind of think that's more of like a machine model, but it's so much more complicated than that. And just the amount of muscle that's involved in singing and pitch, right? That's why they're really looking at, why do singers make those faces when they hit high notes, right? Why do they get that stank face up on the high notes? What Carrie Obert will call the Nashville squint. It's because engaging all of this activates other muscles, and the study of fascia, that kind of netting that's holds us together, that's continuous and all through our muscles, and when if it tenses in one area, it can radiate and spread, how that all works into it. We start to fall apart when we simplify the voice into models, but they're necessary to understand. So the timing of this, I know they've been looking at this for a number of years, but I think it's been, you're right, in the last 15, 20 years that voice teachers have become more aware of acoustics and how this works and how this benefits singers. And singers, they obviously can't think this way as they're singing. But voice teachers, what I found for me personally is the more I get this knowledge, I compare it to playing Where's Waldo. So Waldo is very hard to find at first. You just see all this red and white. But once you see Waldo, he just jumps out at you. And you can go back to that page, and it's instant. You can find him. And I find the more that I learn, it's more like I can tell where Waldo is. And I can just hear better with this knowledge, even if my knowledge is incomplete, and even at times when it's slightly wrong, because this stuff's hard to understand, and I have to grapple with it and wrestle with it and think of it 20 different ways before it even makes sense. And I still will look at these brilliant people and these voice researchers and just kind of go, wow, okay, I need to study more.
Sure. But even more so, noticing that it seems a human having their head in a certain subject, it really, because there's been conversations over the years about how much science should you know as a voice teacher, right? And you just touched upon it there, especially the singers. How much should they be thinking about it when they're on stage? Probably zero. But for your point of view as a teacher over the years who's changed many voices, this is a great question for you, actually. Is there anything that you can put your finger on that you think has had the biggest bang for its buck?
I think acoustics, and I think just understanding on a basic level, when you're struggling with registration in the voice and what that is. It's essentially, you're going from one interaction or one dominant resonance in the vocal tract that's interacting with the sound wave, providing more of the boost. Then you need to hand that over to a different resonance. So the first resonance needs to hand over to the second resonance. And the balance of that and how you do that and facilitate that, because it's not just this simple binary handover. You can stay more, resonance one, or they'll talk about formant one, You'll see them used interchangeably, but they're actually slightly different. The resonance is the acoustic property in the vocal tract, and the formant is the measurable boost in energy that we can see. So we're adjusting the resonances, and then we get these formants boosts, is my more recent understanding of it. But to know that this first resonance, where we're in our lower register and where we tend to talk, and it's a very comfortable configuration. And as we go higher, we start to kick into our natural shout mechanism unless we can override that. And that's that first resonance hanging on to a part of the sound wave that's very strong. It's very primal, but it hits a ceiling. And that's why singers feel like, "Oh, I either have to keep pushing or I have to just completely let go." And what you can actually do is allow this first resonance to give over to a higher resonance that interacts with a different part of the sound wave. And when you first learn to do that, it feels incredibly unstable. That's why it helps to have a teacher guide you. But just that knowledge of, I have to give over from one amplifier to another amplifier. I have to give over from, to simplify it, the bass amplifier more to the tweeter. And that handover is what keeps voice teachers in business, really dialing that in. And the way that's primarily done, to adjust these resonances, the way that we understand it, the interface that works for us is vowels and shades of vowels and vowel tuning.
And so would you say that is the vowel is the instruction, or it's the tool to garner what is required for the outcome for the singer?
Very often. Certainly once the singer is beyond the beginning stage, of course, support, airflow regulation is important, right? Resistance, how much resistance you're going to have at the vocal folds. But these systems, the voice is not a linear system. We don't go from breath to vocal cords to resonance tube to the listener. But actually each aspect, it's nonlinear, so that A to B to C, then C affects B. So your resonance affects your vocal folds, which affects the airflow, which affects your vocal folds, which affects the resonance. So it's this system that's affecting itself. But once you get a basic handle on support and being able, the coordinations of working from long fat folds to longer thinner folds and beginning to work range, what occurs in the vocal tract really, to me, becomes primary. And that's the thing that can either give you success or failure. And most singers, beyond a certain point, that's where the real work is dialing in, going from even just from vowel substitutions, which is the early version of that, to actual vowel tuning, and to get into the micro adjustments that affect intensity and color and all of these things. Vowels are almost infinite in their spectrum. And, we don't just, when people say pure vowel, I almost don't understand what that is, because it's going to sound different in every voice. And, I can say no, no, oh, no. I can have an ooh, or I can have an osh ooh, right? I can have an ooh with a bit of ah in it. So I have all of these choices.
And that is so funny. How many times in the past, how many years, especially living in America, that I've gone to I say, can you say oh? And what I get back is oh. Oh, you forgot. You're American. Yep, sorry. You didn't grow up in a village in Salisbury. That's the but so true, and it matters, right? And so where we come from with these shapings, it matters. But I love what you said there, because clearly, John, part of what I really want to do here is I'm fascinated by all the many teachers walking around this earth right now and what goes on in their heads, and then how that translates into the lesson. So therefore, how does that translate to the value that can be given to singers across the world? And so, I think it's really important. Some of the things you said there. You said that you're feel truly the primary for you is the mechanism within the throat and the mouth, and how that can change how a singer feels and how it sounds when they're doing what they're doing or want to achieve what they want to achieve. I align with that so much. Of course I do, because of, this is you were part of the entryway for my teaching career, which I'll get onto in a second. But that is just sort of one paradigm, one framework of thinking, I suppose. Has there ever been, across all of the years that you've been in workshops, you've trained teachers, that sort of thinking, the vowel changes the shape and everything that goes along with that hasn't worked for you? Especially, I'd love to know if it happened in a workshop, because that can be sort of revealing. Or has it always happened and you've always had
No,
success?
I can. I'm having to think of the specifics. I'm having flashbacks of being in front of a room full of people and working with a singer and starting to feel flop sweat as my bag of tricks begin to fail me. But it it's really then the approach to the human being that's in front of you, right? Because we can have all of this understanding and how things are supposed to work on paper, and then we have a human being in front of us and how we connect with them and the mechanism for them to find their way into balance. And I remember as a young teacher, and I was being trained, and I was specifically told to never use imagery, and that imagery is just damn metaphysics. And it was drilled into me. And certainly that can be overused. And I think it can be problematic when the teacher tries to force their imagery on a student. But imagery, and if we look at high level motion coaching, the world of athletics, I think is so informative for us in the voice. And there's much more money in research in sports than there is in music. So it's a great place to look to this. Imagery works fantastic, because when you start getting too technical, the brain starts to begin to overanalyze, and that can inhibit smooth motion and speed and reaction. So I have found that imagery really was a huge missing piece for me, being used successfully. And then also, I know Chris Johnson has done a lot of work and looking at motion and how singers use that. And I think that's absolutely brilliant. There are so many different disciplines that are converging on the singing world. I think that's one of the things that the internet has opened up, is that I'm hoping that the silos of voice teachers keep breaking down, and it's more exchange of information. Um, and I'll just give one of my soapbox points here. But for me, this is very important. Um, no matter how much you disagree with a teacher, there's still something you can learn. Every teacher can teach you something. And so I think we just need to continue this openness and dialogues like this. And
Mhm.
I think because our job is a service industry, we serve teachers. I'm sorry, we serve singers. And so it's important for us to just get as much information as we can, and then find ways that we can make it applicable to each and every singer. So, yeah, I have certainly had attempts at a certain approach, certainly when I was more rigid, where it hasn't gone to plan.
Mhm. And when you mentioned about the more conceptual way of teaching, or these conceptual instructions, that resonates with me, because I've really struggled with that in my life. that side of things, which some people I'm sure would say that that's why I need more of it, because I struggle with it. How did you, when you came across that and you had that revelation, was it an easy thing for you to transfer in your teaching? Because it is in some way, it's quite a huge paradigm shift in the brain to go from this is what I believe and this is why I use the tools that I use to there's this other area of information that could potentially help some people. It's something outside of my normal wheelhouse. Can I, do I feel comfortable? Do I feel authentic bringing this into the lessons and have confidence in what it's going to do? It's a little bit of an abstract question, but have you ever crossed that before, where there's been some topics or information that you've been inspired by, but have sort of struggled to bring it into your work? Or
Yeah, I think you have to play with it at first and just experiment. I mean, with imagery, uh, I'll just ask, what did that feel like? Explain that to me. And so they can verbalize it and go, okay, so do that again. Have that imagery. I will sometimes suggest imagery. It's rather simple, but what I find effective. A couple of my favorite ones is your head is a helium-filled balloon. And so what that does, it instantly lengthens the spine. It fixes the posture without going in stiffening or going into a sway back. Another one that I love is the idea of you're on top of the note. So the sense of self. I get into the metaphysics of what the self is quite a bit, because not to my students, but just for my own self, as it were, just in terms of being able to let go of dogma that I might find in my life. But even just talking to the student, this sense of self where you feel yourself, you're above the note, right? You're not locked behind your eyes. You're above the note and you're placing the note down. You're setting it down for the high note. Because what we do, we perceive notes as higher. We perceive the self, the person that's doing all the work, is behind the eyes. And so we're pushing up to try to get to this, rather than this expansive view of you're just above setting the note down. And that's the other thing I'll mention now because I'm thinking of it. But I try and avoid binaries. But here's one binary that I holds true for singing for me. Is singing, very often when we're struggling, it becomes a system of contraction. The body contracts, the voice contracts, the self contracts, right? Our energy contracts, and singing needs to be expansion. It's expansion of the body. It's expansion of the mechanism, right? It's not here. Everything begins to open. It's also an expansion of the self and the energy and the connection. Great performers, they expand, they fill the room they're in. You can feel it. It's palpable when you're in the presence of a great performer. Whereas when someone's struggling, right, you feel everything contract. And we get nervous and tense in the contraction.
and that you can almost, I can almost feel it when you're speaking through that there. Absolutely. In every walk of life, it seems resistance like that isn't maybe valuable in the short term sometimes, but for the most part, it's problematic. And so, honestly, though, Johnny, when I'm hearing you speak, it makes sense that you've had so much success as a teacher, to me, because you find it very easy to jump between the scientific world, acoustics, and everything we spoke about there, to now, as you say, imagery and how that can present some unlocks in singers' minds. And I know from knowing you, the musical side of your life and how you bring in even being able to assist with timing because of your drumming background and everything there. So I think every singing teacher must be on a spectrum of how many things they can call upon and how easy it is for them to transfer between those things. But so to go a little deeper into that, How do you feel about the more sort of, I guess, character-based or personality-based aspects of the singing teacher and student relationship? So how much does it matter that the singer and teacher get on or, really vibe together in terms of the way they communicate, what they relate on, and any other thing in that area? Um, have you ever come across anything in your teaching where that you've noticed, oh, I've got all these tricks and tools and experience and knowledge, but there's something about the actual relationship here as humans that maybe isn't vibing? Or have you noticed there's a subset of people where it's like, yeah, they're my people, they're the people that really I really vibe with?
Yeah, I think that's an incredibly important point. And absolutely. Look, the world, much more so than when I first started, is full of fantastic voice teachers. And young voice teachers know so much more than when I started. I mean, and I just see the amount of content out there that is just brilliant. I think, on a side note, all of the free content can be a bit of a trap because singers need specific guidance, but still there's fantastic information out there. So the key is, um, who is the right person to learn it from? And I think you do need to connect with the teacher. I think that the human element of voice teaching and knowledge, because as the world is changing rapidly with the implementation of AI, and as it's even starting to creep into, well, certainly not creep into, it's in the music world, but even the teaching of music, the human element is still primary. You need to be with someone that you trust. You need to be with someone that you feel hears you, understands not just your voice, but also, every voice is unique, but also the connection of the mind, spirit, whatever it is. That connection to your voice is also unique. The way you think about music, the way you process music, the way you hear music. I look at Jacob Collier and go, I wish I could hear music like him. I just don't. I don't have his relationship with music. I just stand on the sidelines in awe. But I have my own relationship with music and my understanding of what catches my ear. And every person has a unique relationship to their voice and music and how they feel about it. And I think the connection to the teacher and that human element is so vital. This knowledge is dead without that human connection and the ability to be where the student is and to have that agreement. And I believe in student-centered teaching, but I also believe in going, hey, no, this is what your voice needs. We need to work on this as well. And getting some pushback, right? I mean, people are seeing it in AI where it can be so obsequious and tell you every idea you have is a great idea that it becomes disgusting. And now it's gotten better and it's starting to push back. But I think you also need that in the relationship. But yeah, the human element and having the right teacher and the teacher having the right student is important. And that is a big reason why I put so much content out there and I'm really open. People will say there's a scam of voice teachers holding back information. I don't know a single voice teacher that holds back information. If you listen to my podcast, for better or worse, everything I know about the voice and singing is on there in some degree. What it serves as is it's not just me helping people, but it's also a filter for people to go, I think I want to learn from him. Because if that connects with them, then we're likely going to have a much better experience working together.
Hmm. Excellent. Yeah. And so you mentioned student-centered learning. What, what, how, what, how would you define that? And I've got another question for you on that, based on the way that you think. I'd love to know also the way that you think other people might define student-centered learning.
Man, that to me in my mind. It's kind of like bel canto. It's a term in search of a meaning. Um, so now, doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't have a meaning. My understanding of it is that you're focused on the student and the student's goals and what the student needs. And I think that's wonderful, right? We're there to facilitate what the student wants. If a student, I remember hearing a story about this blues singer, and he went to a teacher I happen to know, and the teacher started playing him all these opera recordings and going, "Can you imagine? I can get your voice to sound like this." And of course, the blues singer ran away. So you have to, when you're working with artists, you can't change their fundamental sound, etc. But I also believe that they're coming to you for a reason, and that you want to be able to give them your opinion when it may be at odds with what they think is right for their voice, and to bring your experience as well. So, I don't know how others view it, to tell you the truth. I see the term get thrown around a lot. Um,
Yeah.
and I'll honestly use it myself. I guess we all say, yeah, we do it, but how each of us implements it, I think, is different.
Sure, sure. And that's such a great point. The I think there must be a general idea that we allow the singer to do, or student in any domain, to do what they would like to do or would like to achieve. But I
Yeah.
suppose the deeper question there is, how do we facilitate that as an industry and individuals?
No, I was going to say, I think it's different, right, for each student and genre and goals. So if somebody's an indie artist, you have a lot more room to play than if someone came to you and said, "Hey, I'm a Helden tenor, and I want to sing the role of Siegfried, in Bayreuth." Then that's a different path. That has a more structured path. So it's you have to be able to fit within a certain stylistic box, and a certain sound. And you have to be of a certain voice type. And if you're not that voice type, if you're not a Helden tenor, then it is that teacher has to tell you so, and has an obligation to tell you that role's not realistic and you could harm your voice trying to do it. So it's really different depending on the circumstances.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like there's a developmental, I guess I could categorize it that way, developmental difference as well. Seemingly, it seems to me that the further a singer gets down the line in terms of advancement, and or the expectations they have for their career, or what they need to be doing with their voice. So let's just say, whether it's singing 4 nights a week in at weddings or in a pub, versus someone on Broadway, or, as you say, out there singing in concert halls, that for sure has a different, those singers for sure have a different need. And I wonder, though, how much the relationship between them and the teacher, if that at all changes, versus someone who is at the start of their journey and is looking to explore, looking to uh, uh, find out more about their individual voice. Actually, at that point, is it better or is there more room for us to place our attention to, no, it's going to work better for you if you work with this kind of teacher, because the way they teach is more sort of hands off. They're a little bit more sensitive. They allow you
Yeah.
to explore a bit more, versus, okay, we've got a job to do here. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go.
Yeah, there are teachers who are expert in trauma-informed teaching, right? And so they have to be very careful in how they communicate, and very sensitive with the student. And we've all had that. We have the student that's maybe is more of a beginner, and all their options are open. And then you'll have someone that comes to you and says, "Hey, I have this audition, or I have this performance in 3 days. I need your help." You're going to work very differently with the person that has a very specific task within a short window. We have to get this going. It's not time to really get into how they feel about the voice or who they are as a person. It's like, no, you need to bring me those lyrics. We're going to adjust these vowels. You're going to approach this way. So
Right.
yeah.
And last one on this, John, and I swear I'll let it go. How do they go about finding the teacher that's going to be able to sort of match where they are on that journey? Does it in some way always just need to be a bit of trial and error?
It's an imperfect process that you can diminish the amount of error, I think. And it can take a while to find the absolute right teacher, but first, people in your area that are singing well, that are peers of you, is there a teacher that they tend to work with in your area? Is there someone whose content you connect with that you've seen on TikTok or YouTube? Someone you've been following that makes sense, the results that they get. And I think it's really looking for, no matter where you are in your singing journey, just having an idea of, and this can always change, but what do I want to get out of my voice? Why am I singing? Who do I see as somebody that seems to be able to solve the problems that I feel I have? Whether these problems are in terms of even confidence and certain problems with how we believe in ourselves and think about the voice versus physical issues that you feel like, once I'm a male singer and I can't sing above F, above middle C. So who is somebody that can show me how to get up and over that but still sing with power? And so you have to do a bit of your homework. Luckily, the homework is much easier to do these days.
Mm-hmm. With the access to, the internet for a start, it's
Yeah.
it's and as you say, that seems to be the best side of social media is the ability to be able to expose ourselves in a way so that people can find the guide or mentor or teacher that will actually provide them with at least a step forward at that part in their journey. And it may not be forever, but I think that is I actually think that's a great way for us to think about marketing. Even, it's so easy for us to come in from the side of struggling. I need more students. I need. I'm not going to pay for my building or whatever it may be. So I need to find a way to market. I need to find a way to get some ads going. But maybe if we come from the point of view of, I need people to truly understand what I'm awesome at, and how
What problem
if
do you
they need.
solve?
Sure, right, which I know is the heart of a lot of good marketing, and this is right up your street as well. So, do you have any thoughts on marketing for on that basis, and how sort of genuine? Where is that line between ruthlessness and being genuine in our marketing efforts?
Yeah, I think ruthlessness in marketing tends to come from increasing people's fears. There's fear-based marketing, right? That they use it in health products a lot. That's why those tend to be scrutinized more. But you can even see voice teachers do it. They'll make everyone the enemy. What voice teachers won't tell you. Don't fall for the scams. And I'm thinking, I really can't think of scam voice teachers. If you want to scam people, you should go into crypto. This is not the place that you're going to get rich scamming people. You're going to get found out pretty quick. But there's that type of aggressive marketing. But I think voice teachers, to authentically market themselves in a way that's not going to feel gross, is really think about, what is your superpower? Right? Think of the perfect student for you and the problems that you solve, and then create content to help people solve those problems. And when you do that, people will start to find you. But But I've seen voice teachers, what they do is, and look, I know we all believe this. When I ask, who can you help? They say, everybody. But that's not a way to market yourself. You really need to find out who it is you truly, truly have a heart to help. And that's changed for me over the years, who I've focused on and who I've marketed to, and the audience that I seek to build. And I think I've seen voice teachers and their websites, never mind the design, but just the basic idea of the website is, here's a headshot of me, or here's a picture of my studio, here's my CV or my resume, and basically, do you want lessons? It's this binary yes or no, and most people are going to go no, because that's a huge commitment. So I talk about it. If you have a legal issue that is keeping you awake at night, that's a huge burden for you, and you need to find an attorney. And the first attorney's website just lists all of their accomplishments and where they went to school and the seminars they've taken. And then the next attorney's website actually talks about the particular problem that you have, and provides you a free checklist, provided you give your email, of course, but gives you a checklist where it can help you prepare for court on that particular problem. Who are you going to likely go with? The person that has given you some sense of solution, the person that you believe understands your problem and understands you. That's how voice teachers should view marketing.
Wonderful. Because again, one other thing that I've seen on some of the social media sites is when people do say, how can I get more students? And what you say then is it really ties into that for me. I can't help but think, and I know this is too simple to think this way. But maybe this this push into social media, and it's almost an element of entitlement that I see, that I want to do this thing with my life, so therefore surely people should just come and want to work with me. Whereas if you say, how do they know how you're going to help them? Let's start there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It's very hard, because you have voice teachers who are so gifted and so earnest in what they want to do, and they really do want to help people. But let's say they've had to move, right? I've seen voice teachers rail against marketing of any kind, but if you want to live in the same location for 20 years and build that word of mouth, great. At the 10-year mark, you probably won't need marketing. You'll be fine. But for those of us that are more mobile, they move for whatever circumstances. Now you have gifted teachers who don't have enough students, and that can be incredibly frustrating. And you can get angry about that, but that's not the way forward. The way forward is to really figure out how you can help people, where those people tend to be, and then have yourself be there. So my audience these days, my audience now is singers 50 and over. And it's not that I can't help young singers. I have a passion for helping young singers, but my own voice, and being diagnosed a few years ago with an essential vocal tremor that I thought at the time was just going to destroy my ability to even speak, right? And then having to go through intense rehab and exercises and everything to get this under control, I realized, my gosh, I can help older singers, people who are aging, that are starting to have those issues with their voice. And where are they? They're on YouTube. They're not on TikTok. So I focus on YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
right? I focus where they're going to be. And then I give content.
Well, and that is a I can't imagine. It must have been stressful, and I know that's an obvious thing to say, but and upsetting. We know how much people who use their voice, that use their voices, how much it affects us, and our mental health when we can't use it in the way that we once could. There's a serious sense of loss when
Yeah.
problems occur like that. And so you've been through you've been through something like that. And so what was you what happened to you through that? And what have you worked your way through it? And how did you work your way through that?
Yeah. So, well, what I've discovered is this aging thing is overrated. Um, so
Sure.
in my late 50s, I'm 63 now. In my late 50s, I suddenly was having serious problems with my voice. And it was vocal weakness, and then I was starting to get this involuntary tension in my voice, and even more disturbing, I couldn't get my voice to stabilize. My voice began to shake, even my speaking voice. And when I finally went to get a diagnosis, I was already 90% sure what I had. But hearing the words that you have essential vocal tremor, it still hits you hard.
Hmm.
And I will admit, I got off the call and I probably cried for about 5 minutes. And then I said, okay, this I have to look at as a gift from the Stoic gods. I was reading. I actually read bit of Stoicism every morning, so that they would call that's a challenge from the Stoic gods. So I will accept it as such. And how can this lead me to something different? And I worked with Carrie Obert, who's a brilliant voice teacher, researcher, speech language pathologist, and probably one of the foremost experts in treating vocal tremor. Vocal tremor is neurological. They don't know what causes it, and there is no cure at this time. But what I found I had to do was I had to stabilize all of the muscles around the voice, if you will, the vocal cords, in order to stabilize the tremor. Because if I don't stabilize the tremor, it's here all the time. My voice sounds like this. And so you would imagine that people aren't going to want voice lessons from someone who sounds like this. So I have to kick into this other gear. I feel it underneath. It still wants to pop in, but I can control it now. And what I went through, I realized, or I talked with Carrie in discussions and said, this seems like would help the aging voice and the weakness and the atrophy and the stiffness that people 50 and certainly over 60 experience in the voice because aging hit me like a hammer. You know, aging was something I always thought, well, yeah. I know I'll get older, but not really. And then it was like, oh shit, I'm getting old. And so other people, and it's devastating to watch people lose their relationship and their passion for singing because they're dealing with age-related issues in the voice that can be mostly overcome, right? You're never going to have the same range that you had at 25, assuming you're singing optimally, but you can still regain range, strength, tone, all of these things. No matter your age or condition, there is still potential in the voice that you haven't tapped. So that actually brought this affliction. Gate was the hidden blessing, was allowing me to help people in a new way. And the voice has to be approached differently than the voice of a 25-year-old.
Mhm. And what just if there are if there is anybody out there thinking, oh, how could that is me, and I'd love to work on something. Is there anything that you can give there to as a starter for people that may be experiencing what they may perceive as being age-related issues? Where should they start on that
One of the
basis?
first things they can do is when they do, because I encourage people to do SOVTs, right? Lip bubbles, singing with a straw, etc. But one of the problems with SOVTs is we can be very passive with them. We let the straw do the work. And as an older singer, we actually need to start employing more energy to the voice. We actually need to start building muscle because we're experiencing weakness and we're experiencing atrophy. So even within lip bubbles, rather than just going, really focusing on your posture, focusing on this idea of support. An exercise that I get from Carrie that I love is the old Superman. He's able to stop a speeding locomotive, and that idea, if you're going to stop a locomotive and you take that body posture, you will feel your core engage, keeping that energy as you do your lip bubble. Feel your soft palate as you go up, raise it as high as you can. Get that involved. Feel the back of the throat expand. Work those muscles. Begin to work your tongue. Work the back of the tongue doing that kind of Kermit the Frog sound to get that tongue to be able to activate. Because when people sing high, they're doing all these amazing things, and primarily this narrowing of the vocal tract that has to occur in order to give energy to those high frequencies so that they don't die. And if going back to that timbron theory and transient theory of voice production in the beginning, when we get this little pop of sound, right? The low frequencies, they go slower, so their cycle lasts longer, whereas the high frequencies, they burn out quick. Imagine, a door spring, and we've got a long one. It goes boing, yoing, 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 yoing. But you got a short one. It's going to go brr, brr. It's going to stop vibrating very quick. So being able to get the strength to narrow the vocal tract, to boost and give energy to those high frequencies so they last. That's why the voice starts getting duller. That's why the vibrato starts to because of the weaknesses in the vocal tract. Start focusing on your vocal tract. Start focusing on energy. Be present. You can't be passive when you practice anymore. That luxury is gone decades ago. And the other thing, as you have to let go of the voice you had at 25, 35. That voice is gone. You have a different instrument now. You need to focus on this instrument and doing what this instrument needs. Right? As they say, comparing is despairing. And I see people, they're just longing for that old voice, and it's not coming back. Right? We can look in the mirror and see that's not my 25-year-old face, unless I make ridiculous surgical attempts. And it's still not my 25-year-old face. So you have to work with the voice you have now, and you have to become very active in its recovery.
That was such a poignant point there about I took it as you almost have to increase your expectation for the level of energy that you are putting into things as you get older, and which can seem counterintuitive. Well, not counterintuitive, but it definitely works against the way we feel we want to do things as we get older, which I think is half the issue. Even with on the sports side of things, I picked up playing soccer, as you guys call it, over here recently, and my mind is definitely going faster than my legs can now. And it's actually, and for a moment it gets rather demoralizing, but then, as you say, if I channel it into, okay, I get it though, I haven't really done anything for the past 20 years, and so my muscles and how they fire and how the relationship between the joints and everything isn't what it was. Doesn't mean that I can't get some way back to where it was, but it's going to take some work. At a time when I probably have the least time to put into those kind of things, so it's a bit of a conflict going on there. But I've noticed that the energy, bringing energy into anything that we do, especially as we get older, can really make some differences. So I'm so glad to hear you say that about the voice. I'm sure a lot of singers would love to hear that as well. That maybe they think it's all over, but actually it's not. And there's a lot more left.
It's never over. As long as you can, I tell singers, as long as you can phonate and make a sound, you're still in the game. Singing is something that we are biologically wired to do. They there's this theory, the Musa language theory, where 150,000 years ago, our language was a sung language that expressed emotion. And about 100,000 years ago, it forked off to singing and music and speech. But they have a common root, and speech is still a form of singing. Great speakers are essentially using rhythm and melody and phrasing and all of these things to get their point across. And we are born to sing. All children sing, all cultures sing, all religions sing. And unless it's incredibly oppressive, and if you notice some of the oppressive religions, they take away singing. We are born to sing. It's your birthright. And you know, 100 some odd years ago, middle class homes in the U.S. and Europe, the entertainment center was the piano. There was over 1,000 piano companies in the United States. I think there's less than 5 now. And what happened was we got the phonograph and the radio, and we got these world-class singers in our home, and suddenly it was like, oh, they sing, I don't. Singing became passive. And I tell people, look, I don't care if you're the worst singer in the world, you should sing every day. It is found to be, if they look studies on aging, especially cognitive ability, what keeps coming up is one of the greatest things you can do: music, listening to music, even better, playing music, and even better than that, singing. Singing lights up the brain like no other activity you can do. And the reason to study singing is because it becomes more enjoyable when you do it better. And if it's more enjoyable, you'll sing more, which is better for your health, your cognitive health, your social health. It's so vitally important. So when people say, I can't sing, no, you've just chosen not to. That's my mission statement. If I really want to give one, is your singing is your birthright.
And that correlate, as you say, the correlations there, that not only the benefits of using your voice in that way, but then you're more likely, don't know if that's true, I can't remember from the choir days, but you are more likely going to be sharing that in social situations, more likely going to be maybe joining choirs or
Yeah,
groups of, whether it's a band or whatever it is, and that in and of itself is great for us as a human. But
it's primal. It's
do you
primal
think
as
though?
social beings to sing together. Mike, and
Mhm.
that connection on that level is special.
So there's something in there, though, isn't there, that prevents people from doing it? Is there something in the singing that we want to do now? The pop singing, the belting, that is actually, that is an expectation that goes far beyond this type of singing that we would do, quote unquote, naturally. That creates a conflict in people's minds between, I get that singing's fun and nice and good for me, but I can't do it like that, so that's what puts me off, and I feel sad about it. Is
Yeah.
that where the conflict is? Why aren't more people doing this,
It's funny,
getting into singing?
there's a shaming that will take place
Mhm.
if we don't sing well. That no one is going to shame someone who's just starting piano, that they
Mhm.
can't play
Mhm.
Billy Joel, right? You're not going to feel embarrassed that you don't know where middle C is at your first piano lesson. But we come into, because the voice is such an extension of who we are and how we connect with others, that we will be embarrassed if we can't sing at a certain level, even if we're just beginning. And also, um, just the shaming of other people. People just joke,
Mhm.
"Oh, that voice is terrible." It's like, why do you have to take that from that person? Why do you have to
Mhm.
attack that? So many people, they don't sing because they have heard a rude comment or critique from a family member, from a loved one, that wasn't meant to cause that amount of harm, but it does. And people will
Mhm.
just stop singing for decades and feel that they can't. It's a
Mhm.
terrible shame. Nobody uh, stops cooking because they can't cook like Gordon Ramsay. Oh,
Mhm.
there's no way I'd ever have a Michelin star. Therefore, I'm not going to barbecue ribs for the family gathering. It's absurd.
All right. Very interesting. Yeah, we need to do something about that. But on that note, John, your your mind has been in AI for a little while now.
Yeah.
Can you, yeah, how do you feel about it in the singing world? How do you feel about where it could potentially go with all of the fears surrounding it? What are your thoughts?
So I am not a strict techno optimist. And a lot of the fears, I believe, are founded. A lot of the issues around AI, certainly currently, the way it was initially trained and massive amounts of copyright infringement, um, just just the ecological problems with these huge data centers currently are an issue. But this is coming. And this is going to be one of the most profound shifts that I can tell in human history. My kids asked me recently, Dad, what was it like before the internet? Can you remember and how different your life was after? And I said, oh, no, 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 no. You're going to tell the story of what life was before AI and after AI. Um, Having said that, and I know it sounds like, yeah, it's a problem, but that's where I'm going to go. AI, we can't avoid it. I've seen people on Facebook, um, voice teachers, when I've talked about AI and I get pushback and they're just complaining. And I point out, you realize that this is an AI interface that you're on, and Meta has huge data centers. I mean, it's basically a data scraping operation that's taking everything about you and reselling it to people. So this isn't really the place to push back against AI because you're interfacing with huge AI right now, against your knowledge and will, obviously. But to utilizing AI, it is in the process of transforming, and you're ahead of me on this one. I'm playing catch up, where we're moving from this back and forth of large language models and one step, like ask it a question, it gives back, ask it another question, it gives back. And we are in the revolution of agentic AI, where it can take many steps on your behalf. And it can basically be like your assistant controlling your computer and taking care of all these tasks. And where I see this coming into the voice teacher world is you're an independent voice teacher. This agentic AI can start to take care of more of the time that you spend on admin and answering emails and all of these different things, even with your current tools like Calendly, right? Let's say you're on vacation and you go, I'd like to extend my vacation a week. Well, those students coming up that week have to be emailed. You have to make shifts. You have to go into your Calendly and you have to make those changes. You have to block yourself out. Then you have to go and probably have to open up extra days in your month, make up those lessons, etc. We are getting to the point where you will just go on your phone and say, hey, I'm taking an extra week off. Contact all the students, open up the next Tuesday and Thursday for 2 hours to accommodate them. Thanks. And agentic AI is going to take care of all of that. They're going to handle the emails, the back and forth, etc. So you can continue to enjoy your vacation. In terms of in the teaching studio, knowledge now, being able to understand research. And I don't do differential equations. You hit research and all of a sudden there's differential equations. You can ask AI, what is this telling me? What do I need to know about this? Explain it in ways that I can understand. Also, they talk about voice teachers, can voice teachers who don't sing well, can they teach? And that whole argument. But even voice teachers who sing well because they need to demonstrate, the problem is they're demonstrating in their voice, not the student's voice. AI very soon will be able to create voice prints of your student and show your student play in your student's voice. Here's how you should approach it. Here is your voice with that vowel adjustment. Can you match that? So that they're hearing themselves, an optimal version of themselves, having made the changes that you're suggesting. To be able to take something like spectrum analysis And right, it's just giving these graphs and these numbers, but in real time and in plain language as an assistant, maybe tell you what's also going on in the student's voice. To be able to hear the voice, and they are right now in China. I talked to an AI researcher there. They are building closed model AIs. And that's what people need to understand. There's open models that they're interfacing with, and then there's closed models that are doing things that you don't have access to. And in China, the ear, nose, and throat doctors will see upwards of 200 patients a day, which is just crazy. And there's no patient privacy laws. So all of these files are being uploaded into an AI that is learning about the voice, because AI needs lots and lots of data. But at some point, the AI will be able to recognize a possible issue, health issue in your student's voice before you will. Like there are changes coming. It's not about removing the teacher. AI without an expert to oversee it creates slop, and slop is certainly a problem. There are Facebook accounts that are voice slop sites, and you can tell because they're posting every 2 minutes, and it's just generic voice information. And because they post so often, they're getting tens of thousands of followers. That's a problem, AI slop. But as a voice teacher, you need to realize that this next generation of voice teachers coming up, they're going to grow up with AI. They're going to understand it. And for you to see what's coming and to be able to help it enhance what you do so that you can focus on being that human in the room that connects with the student. And these are tools to help you be better at your job. That is the positive side that I see with AI. And of course, we have a whole host of problems that we as humans are going to have to learn to deal with that's coming with AI. But that's a whole different podcast.
Sure. So fascinating. Are there any other, do you have any other thoughts on where the human value is? Just so if there's any teachers out there now who are understandably worried about it, because especially with the calls of, you how long have we got as a teacher? How long have we got as a lawyer? How long have we got as a designer? Where is the value that what is the value that we can bring as a teacher in the room, as you say, that relationship piece?
It really comes back to your humanness.
Mhm.
My experience speaking with you today, just interacting with you, the questions you ask and the way that you make me think, and the history that I've had with you and the respect I have with you, I'm having a very different experience than if I told AI, "Hey, ask me a bunch of questions about my teaching and let's see what I think
Mhm.
about." I'm not going to delve as deeply. I'm not going to touch areas as passionately if I'm interacting with an AI. We are still social beings. We are human beings. We need to connect with each other. That's never going to go away. So even as an attorney, yeah, contract law, that's going to profoundly change. But if I've been accused of some heinous crime that I'm innocent of, I still need a human being in that courtroom that is able to connect with jurors in a way that transcends just mere intellect and words on that human level in order to convince them that I didn't do this. So, and voice teaching, that we don't do coding, right? If you're just someone who sits in a back room and writes code, your world is changing. It's already changed. We need to think more like project managers. It's not about AI, you asking a question and giving you an answer. It's really about, as a teacher, as a business, what tools can help you? How can you assist others? A quick example. Chris Johnson, who obviously your partner in the Naked Vocalist, he wrote a post about singing in tune, and he pointed out that a lot of the struggles that beginning singers will have is they're trying to match pitch with their voice, and they're not ready to do that yet with their voice because they need to work audiation. And from that, I went, oh my gosh, he's so right. So I, in the matter of about an hour, was able to create an app where it plays a reference tone, and then there is a pitch slider so that the singer has to move the slider until they feel that they've matched that reference tone they heard a moment before. And then they press the button to check it, and it tells them how many cents or what percent they were off. And then they get another random tone. And so what it's doing is it's building audiation, the ability to create pitch in their mind before they move it to their voice. So I was able to go, wow, Chris is so bang on with this. How can I create something that can help singers do it? And I did it in AI. I don't program. I've never written a line of code in my life. The only thing I can do is go in a terminal and go, type in run, right? But with AI, I asked Claude, how do I set up Claude Code? I asked Claude, how do I talk to Claude Code? How do I create a folder? How do I open this? And now, and it's changing. By the time you publish this, it will have changed. It's changing by the day, and it's just blowing my mind. It still does things that's so poorly done, I just stop and go, well, that sucked. But more and more, it's just blowing my mind what we can create for people and the useful tools and how it can expand knowledge.
I love everything you just said because, as you say, we've talked about this before and how I just can't believe that we can now do things that we've thought about for years and just create it. But beforehand, it would have cost us $50,000 and a software engineer team to make something that was close to what we wanted. But now you can just create whatever you want. And so I would say from being in the as you have been as well, the sort of singing studio, youth theatre, performing arts space, we've known for years that the financial aspects of this industry, unfortunately, it doesn't align with the value that it brings to human beings. And that's another podcast, but it's the truth. And we're living with that, and we're living with the fact that we see how life-changing the arts are for people, and should be, I mean, fundamental. It's actually bonkers to see how it changes people, especially young children. And yet, there needs to be more money skewed this way in order for it to thrive. Well, let's begin with sustain itself to begin with. But now, again, there are many things I see wrong with AI, or the potential problems in the future. But for one thing for sure is that it can definitely help us right now sustain some of the things that are really meaningful and worthwhile in the human existence. And I think if we can get our heads together and do more of that, then we're using it in its best form. And then I guess we just have to try and manage the problems that come on the edges of that. But right now, that's where I'm seeing, as I know you are, I'm seeing a lot of the positives with it. What would you say to someone who wants to get started if they're a teacher and they're thinking, yeah, I'm struggling with my admin, I'm struggling with outreach? Any tips?
Well, the time to get started is right now. It really is because it's changing so fast. I would just start figure out what it is you'd like to do, and then just start looking up how can that be facilitated, and start following people who speak on these things on social media, on YouTube. There are great daily emails that I get that track the AI industry and what's happening, and just start opening yourself up and exposing yourself to it, I think is incredibly important. And one other thing I did want to add, because one of the criticisms is that it's removing people's creativity. It's going to destroy that. And I think about the movie Jaws, the first great blockbuster ever created, right? When you think of Jaws, you think of Steven Spielberg. Steven Spielberg did not write the book. Steven Spielberg did not write the script. Steven Spielberg did not act in the movie. He didn't design any of the sets. He did not design or operate the shark. He was not the cinematographer. He wasn't the main editor. But he is the vision that took all of this into a cohesive work. You could take all of those people and remove Steven Spielberg, and you would have something fundamentally different. You still need the vision. AI needs the vision. It needs the expert. It needs the artist, or what you get is garbage. And people are reacting to the garbage. But AI music, there is a channel, I think it's called Fake Music on YouTube, and they did this funk 70s soul cover of Pearl Jam's Even Flow that blows my mind. It's so good. It's so musical. And this is not a prompt that they typed into Suno. This is somebody that is guiding the AI and track by track, knowing what they want and the arrangement and everything that's going on. Whoever did this is brilliant, because this was not AI left on its own. You know, because you were digging into Claude Code deeper than I was the last time we talked. And you know that sometimes first iterations, you've got to get in there and really work with it and back and forth. I find that good work from AI is not a shortcut. It doesn't always necessarily save me time, but it makes my work better.
Mm-hmm. A lot more clarity. And as you say, just seeing the differences in how it's performing now as a year ago when we're aiming to build things, and it's moving fast. So yeah, just get involved, people, get involved. Well, John, I tell you, I think we've spoken about many things, and I've really enjoyed every part of this conversation. I'd love to
Same.
ask you one more deep one. If no one saw you again after tomorrow, and you had to leave a sentence to the singers of the world that assisted them on their pathway in singing, what would you give them?
That their voice is completely unique. The way that you think about, process, and express music through everything you've absorbed in your life is completely unique. You need to honor that. So my sentence would be, stop comparing and be best version of you that you can share with us.
That's definitely in the trailer for this episode. But so beautiful. That's just it. Really is so true. And yeah, the more we can work towards that, I think it leads to a better life for everyone. Well, John, is there anything else that you would like to add about the industry, about singers, about anything, or have we covered mostly everything you'd like to get across today?
I think your abilities as an interviewer are fantastic. So I love what it is that you're doing. The fact that you're starting this and these dialogues and just, your mission to help singers is incredibly important. And I love that you're using technology in order to help bridge this humanity that we all share. Look, all voice teachers, we all want to help people. We have a common goal. We have different ways of doing it, and that's what makes us special. And I think we just need to honor our differences, just as we honor the differences in our students. None of us have all the answers. None of us are even close, but we just do the best we can. So keep on trying.
Thank you so much, John Henny.
Thank you.
That was John Henny, someone who has spent over 2 decades chasing a clearer picture of what is actually happening inside a voice and finding that the more he understands, the better he hears. What stays with me from this conversation is the Where's Waldo image. Where's Wally in the UK? John described that having a deeper knowledge of acoustics does not give you more things to think about in the room, it gives you better perception. Waldo is harder to find the first time. Once you've seen him, he jumps out. That is a different argument for science literacy than the one most teachers make, and it's a honest one for sure. He also said something that I think is worth sitting with. This knowledge is dead without human connection. John is someone who genuinely holds both of those things at once, the acoustic precision and the relationship, and I think that combination is rarer than it looks from the outside. If you're a singer wondering whether John's approach matches how you learn, his full profile is at wehelpsingers.com, including his paradigm fingerprint and how to reach him. I'll be back in 2 weeks with another teacher, another paradigm. See you then.